Okay, so it's 7:05. I don't want to take up too much of our time from either of my co-hosts here. So allow me to begin with the introduction. So I'm Dr. Shanice Armstrong. I'm a clinical faculty member at Southern New Hampshire University. Um, I really have been feeling like a lot of school counselors have been left out of the discussion and and kind of left out of conversations about how are we addressing this, what do we do. And I wanted to create a forum for you all and for us all to talk about what we've been doing, to talk about some of the challenges that we're anticipating, the challenges that we're seeing. And so Ms. Edwards, Regina, was kind enough to say, hey, I can help you with that conversation. I actually kind of begged her, hey, come and have this conversation with us. She is a school counselor in Japan currently, a guidance counselor. And a close friend of mine. And so I was like, Regina, you would be the perfect person to kind of share your experiences with how you have transitioned the experiences that you've had and kind of meeting the needs of your students. And I think that's really necessary as we're sharing resources. There's been a lot of great webinars, a lot of great conversations going on out there. And so I wanted to assist in having more school counselor focused conversations. And so as the treasurer of the Arkansas Counseling Association, I felt like I had the forum and some of the resources necessary to begin this conversation. And so we are fortunate enough to have Regina Edwards and Lindsay Perrine out of New Jersey join us in kind of facilitating this conversation, as well as all of you lovely folks who have experiences and trying and beginning this transference yourselves. And so we just want to kind of have a community chat about how do we make this jump? What are some challenges that we might anticipate? And what are some things we might want to be aware of that we have not anticipated? The United States, I think, is in a very unique place as the responses to COVID have been by county by county. And so some people are just entering a stage of transition, and some people are just now faced with the reality of closures, while some of us have been dealing with closures for a week or two or more. And I think Lindsay has a lot to say about that. New Jersey initiated a lot of their school closures about 2 weeks ago. Ms. Edwards, you've been under school closure for about 3 weeks now?
3 weeks. We're on a spring break, so total 4 weeks. But we've been social distancing since about mid-February.
Yeah. So I was like, these are some really great people to help us facilitate this conversation. And so I just want to read the bios that I have. Lindsay Perrine is a current school counselor at Millstone Middle School in Millstone, New Jersey. She is also part of her school's climate and culture and harassment, intimidation, and bullying committees. She is a certified school counselor through New York University and is a former elementary school teacher. Regina Edwards is the current Director of Guidance at Marist Brothers International School in Kobe, Japan. She addresses child safety guarding policies, and she is a certified school counselor through the state of Texas and a Texas A&M University Corpus Christi alum. She is also a former elementary, middle, and special education teacher. So they both bring with them a lot of experience in school counseling, but also in social distancing and school transfers. So I want to welcome you all and thank you all for taking some time out of your evening to figure out how can we continue to support our students as comprehensively as possible. So you are muted currently, and we are recording, as I mentioned before. We do want this to be an open conversation, so I have allowed you guys to unmute yourselves and to really make this a conversation, because we all have something to offer at this space, but we all also have our challenges and anxieties around what are we going to do and how are we going to help our students. And so once again, feel free to come in and join. So I'm going to transfer the floor over to Regina and to Lindsay.
Okay. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This is a super great opportunity for us to all get together and to talk about everything that we're experiencing. So an overview of what we have planned for tonight is I'm going to be speaking, then we're going to have an open floor discussion, then we're going to have a little bit more structure going through a few things like unique challenges for age groups, how to develop coping skills and social emotional learning, how to continue our services to our students, and promoting wellness, staying healthy, things like that. And then we're going to talk about how we'll continue or have a follow-up. So I did want to set a couple norms. So we're going to be using the chat box as a way to share resources with each other and talk about if there are different topics for discussion that you would really like to address, if you can also put those into the chat box. That's going to be our best way to keep a record of things and know what to send in our follow-up piece. So that's how we're going to be utilizing that feature. If you would like to share, please feel free. We also have the reaction button, so if that's something that you feel more comfortable with, go ahead and let us know through that way. So I wanted to start off by talking about what my experience has been. As Dr. Armstrong already mentioned, we've been in this transition process for a while. We've had 3 weeks of distance learning at my school. We're on a spring break right now, and next week we're going to have at least 1 more week of distance learning. After that, maybe more, we don't know. So the challenges that I've gone through, that I'm sure you guys have all gone through, is where to start. There weren't that many resources. Thankfully, there are more now, but it's still daunting. It's hard to know where we should be starting, how we should reach the kids, what we're going to do, because this is a platform that we've never really had to navigate before. So after kind of reaching out to all the school counselors in Japan, there's not as many as you would think. So we were on an email list of about 80 people, and we were all sharing resources that way, and that was fantastic. So after we kind of set some initial resources out for each other and started learning what our colleagues in China were doing, and people that maybe have been distance learning for a lot longer, that's what we went ahead and started. After doing that, I had like my own needs assessment for my campus, determining who was going to need what, how we were going to come up with a plan to see everyone. That was kind of a big piece. And just to have some context, my school is a private school, and so there's a lot of privilege that comes with that. We already knew that most of our students have technology at home. Access isn't going to be a problem. I do have students from pre-K all the way to 12th grade. I have about 350 students, and I'm the sole school counselor at the school. So it was kind of a lot to navigate on who's going to need the most help. But I kind of came up with a plan that I was going to use the guidance lessons I already do with my upper school students, so 9 through 12, to check in with them. And I'm working very closely with middle and lower school teachers, and basically just knowing what their students need, helping the teachers address the concerns that those students might have. But really, I think the bigger challenge for me was, in Japan, there's not really a lot of mental health services. And right now we're running into students need a lot of mental health support or coping skills. We focus a lot on wellness, so that was nice. But helping my campus understand that mental health and wellness, those are really those are the things that I'm concerned about right now. And after touching base with my students in week 1, I was trying really hard to stay like doing our college readiness, doing the things that we've already been doing, but it was evident that my students weren't there yet. So it quickly shifted to coping skills. Have you eaten? Have you had water today? Have you had enough sleep? Are you setting those routines for yourself? How are you doing that? Giving really short and realistic lessons. I've had to structure it to where I put a video the morning that I'm supposed to see my students. I'll put a video up, and then when I'm supposed to have class, we just have like a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet, and we'll use that time to talk and just socialize, because they're not really getting that. And that's been really helpful. Also, just giving them really, really short lessons, like go take a walk. I had students telling me that this was the first time that they had been outside in a week. So keeping that in mind, that this is where your students might be. Some successful things that I've come across, and they're big successes, are my campus was fortunate enough to have a couple days of preparedness time allotted for us. So the Prime Minister announced on Thursday evening that we were going to be closing schools. We had Friday with our students, and that was great because we helped to ensure that they had the access and the passwords. And then we had 2 days of planning, and we went distance learning on Wednesday. So it was a short process, but it was really nice to have those couple days. I already had guidance lessons in place, so building the rapport and the relationships with my students, that was already there, and that's something that I've really drawn upon since they're at home, because I know this, like everyone knows, we all know the students that are needing help and have a good idea of who might need additional help. Another success is being flexible, compassionate, and understanding, and having more patience than you ever think you'd need at this time. Everyone's needing that patience because the whole world is going through this. It's not just your neighborhood or even your country, it's everyone. So keeping in mind that we're parents, we have our own health conditions, we have things that we're going through, and just extending that empathy and that compassion has been really helpful. I will say that going through this process has helped create an even stronger culture of wellness, which I'm extremely thankful for. Everyone is kind of on board and sharing, and we're all supporting each other. And this has been students, staff, people at other schools, you all. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of great strategies. And the last thing that I've felt is a huge win is educators supporting educators. Throughout this time, I've been talking to school counselors in Ireland, in other countries, like all over Europe, all over the US. So that's been great. And I just really want to push the message that we're all into this together. Please look beyond the people in your direct community. We're all here. We're all wanting to support our kids, and we're all going through a lot of the same situations. I wanted to give us some practical tips that I've been using. So here are a few of them. Of course, we all have been trying our best to take care of ourselves and set boundaries. That's extremely important. I'm trying to have flexible yet reasonable boundaries, because I'm having students that are emailing me in the middle of the night and they're sending these things, and we've already kind of talked about, like, I'm not going to respond at that time unless it's a real emergency, and like talking about why are we up in the middle of the night? What are we doing? Also ensuring that everybody, students, staff, and the community know how to contact you with resources. You never know who's going to be needing your help and your services. So just making sure even the community members are well informed and aware. Using one platform. At my school, we use Google Classroom, Zoom, and the younger kids use ClassDojo. That's been super helpful because the kids are not having to learn so many new things, as well as parents. So they're also having to juggle their own jobs and, you know, having more than one child at home, and that's a lot. So if we can just minimize what we're asking our parents to do as well, that would be helpful. Monitoring the feelings of students and staff regularly. I'm checking in all the time. Pretty much every time I get a chance to meet with my kids, I'm checking in with them and seeing how it's going. As best as you can, letting students and staff know what to anticipate with the services and how it'll change throughout distance counseling. And that can be reevaluated as time goes on, but just letting them know. Another one is having basic videos. I already told my kids I'm not a YouTuber. I don't want to go viral. Just, I'm going to have basic stuff. There are going to be mistakes, and that's okay. And keeping up our empathy discussions and saying, okay, extend some empathy to me. I'm learning. We're all in this together. And also being aware that motivation changes over time. My kids were really kind of excited at first, and as it goes on, we're starting to see that feelings are changing. They're not quite as motivated sometimes. They can go from anxious to calm to excited in a very short amount of time. and making sure that we're reaching out to students, because even your students who have been high achieving and very successful, this can be difficult on all of us. And again, being flexible and realistic. We're all in a crisis right now, and it takes a lot for us to function through this. So just extending that, making sure that we're being as open and flexible as possible. Okay. So
I'm going to chime in real quick, if that's cool, just because I'm looking at the chat and I feel like we kind of saw some of the same concerns around accessibility. So how are we reaching all of our kids on this platform? How are we going to make sure that the kids that we're kind of pulling into our offices every day are reaching out to us now on this virtual platform, and how we're making sure that everyone that doesn't have internet access or the resources that they need to learn has that. And then also confidentiality. So I think just maybe if we keep those two topics as our discussion piece, maybe like HIPAA, confidentiality, liability, and then just accessibility as a counselor for our kids, that would be a really good direction for all of us to go in. And I think that could be a fruitful conversation for us. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, that's great. A couple days ago, Lindsay and I were talking to another group of counselors, and someone had a very profound statement on confidentiality. They're telling their students right up from the front that this conversation is as confidential as your side of the screen. So, and that might be something that we can say, but also if we're in a small apartment or in a small house where there are people on your side as well, that's something to keep in mind. Was there anything that you wanted to add on that, Lindsay? Or?
No, I just thought that was a really great comment that she made, because we're only going to be able to maintain as much confidentiality as we can. HIPAA's kind of given us enough leverage to kind of access different platforms that allow that one-to-one, back and forth communication. But, we operate on confidentiality and telling our students that they're within these four walls and everything they say in here stays in here unless we're, fearful that they're in danger. And now we kind of have to express that, but let them know that, we're doing everything on our end to make sure that this is a safe environment. But on your end, let's try to make sure that you can find a safe environment to be in as well, because we want to maintain that. But I think, especially for some of us that are in elementary school, that's tough. A lot of these little guys are with their parents, and that's who's helping them navigate this virtual learning platform. So I think that's a good topic for us to kind of talk about, especially with the younger ones. If we're doing one-to-one counseling, what does that look like? How are we communicating with parents? What are we letting them know about these conversations that we're having? Because it's really tough, especially with the younger guys.
So does anyone have anything they'd like to share on that? Any ideas or maybe things that you've gone through?
And sorry, again, I'm interrupting. Not a good counseling technique.
Maybe the conversation, we're good.
Maybe when some of us begin to share, if you guys are comfortable sharing what academic level you work at, maybe your caseload size too. Just, I think it's cool to hear where everybody's at. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So we can.
Yeah, we can. Oh.
Jenna, I unmuted you. Yep.
I am currently a practicum student at the University of Houston in Clear Lake, and I am a fourth grade teacher. So it's been, yes, a huge adjustment. I just this week got on to Zoom with all of my students, and I was able to give them their normal instruction, and I'm also able to get my counseling hours that I need for my practicum as well. but it has just been a complete flip flop of the world. Like one of our practicum classes, like the week before everything happened, we were talking about how emailing your students or emailing your clients, oh, that's touchy, oh, be careful. And now that's like the only way I can communicate. So that's the huge paradigm shift that it feels like we're going through right now. And what Michael said about everyone not having internet, that is a huge challenge. We're lucky that our district is able to work with the community and with the families and help them access Wi-Fi, but it has definitely been a challenge. Yeah, 100%.
For sure.
Not
I
having
mean,
navigation.
yeah. I mean, Jen, I don't know, I'm sure you've heard this too, but you're already doing way more than I think a lot of teachers are. I mean, when I'm thinking about my district, right? And my, our little ones, I mean, I'm in a middle school, but our kids are craving that one-to-one connection and a Zoom conversation, and our teachers aren't even doing that yet. So the fact that your kids are even seeing you during the day is huge. They don't have that, and your kids do. Great.
They were so excited.
Yeah, because it's
Lucas, Hosa is actually in my practicum. One of our advisors sent us this link and thought it would be a good way for us to get in direct hours. So we were just talking in our class last night that we are exhausted and we just feel like we're working more now than we were before.
Absolutely.
Your overtime, right? Like, I mean, and it's so hard, I think, too, to know that, especially if you're in a community where there's no resources, to know that your kids are now in a place where you can't see them or know what's going on every day. Like, you get to check in with them one-on-one every day, even if it's those small interactions. And right now you don't have that, but those Zoom conversations are helping them feel that consistency. And I think that, especially in a teaching setting, that's so important for them. I don't know if you guys are doing this now, but a lot of our teachers have Google check-in forms where they'll have, they'll send it out to their kids and that morning, and they'll just be like, hey, I just want to hear how your day's going. If you need anything, like, reach out. And they'll kind of leave it as a short answer discussion. And the kids will write, I'm having a great day. I just wish, I could chat with you a little bit more. And then they're pulling those kids during their office hours. I mean, it's not ideal, and we're already over the top with things to do, but it's just another way to get that social emotional piece, to make sure we're at least trying to hear what everybody, how everyone's feeling. But it's still a lot of work on our end, but it helps.
So at my campus, we're not doing that because after talking with several students, they're getting so many emails and so many alerts that it's been even more stressful to have those kinds of check-ins. So instead, I'll post a video so that way I know that they're having to do that, and I'll either, when they submit their video and I see a few people are done, I'll have a very small Google Hangout with 3 people and myself, or I'll just open up my times and I'll say, okay, during this time to this time, just come on in if you feel like it, if you'd like to talk. And I've actually had about half of my students will come in because they really want that connection. So it's been really helpful. And I've had comments like, oh, I feel like I see you all the time, because they're kind of seeing me double than what they typically would. And I think that's been very helpful.
Okay, I'm navigating the chat, and so I'm gonna make sure that we give time and give space for everyone. So Lucas had a question or a comment. I want to make sure that Lucas, did you? Enosa?
Yeah. I did. I was waving hi earlier because Jenna was like that. So she mentioned my name, so I was waving hi.
Okay.
But I do have one that, as Regina was talking about, when you have that, when you have an open meeting and you're having these kids come in, are you screening it so it's just one-on-one? Like one kid comes in, you talk to them, you let them go, then you talk to another one, or are you letting in like a group, like saying like I'm going to have like, hey, I'm talking to somebody, you're here, hey, let's all talk together.
What I've been doing, I'm not going to say that it's the best situation or anything like that. I think you have to figure out what works best for your students. My students have known each other for a very long time, most of them for over 10 years. So we've been having conversations like in a group. I've only had a few conversations one-on-one, and only if it's an emergency and I needed to check and make sure like safety is okay. But it has been small groups, but everyone, I think the culture in Japan is that like people are very like caring and supportive. So we have been able to navigate it like that. I can't really ensure confidentiality because it is a small group. So what I'm doing instead is, it's not a counseling session. It's just a check-in of how are you doing today? How's your stress? How are you managing that? What are you doing to take care of yourself? So it's definitely not like we're not meeting in a group like that, but it's just an optional check-in. Tell me how you're doing.
Thank you. I'm going to translate that for Lucas. So we also have a question from within the chat box. I want to take it back a second. So how are you providing virtual conferencing? Like, what's the process to set that up? Is the coordination efforts independent? Emma, I'm going to unmute you to make sure that I've translated your question correctly, and to make sure that there's not another piece that you want to add to this question about how do you set up these virtual conferences. So Emma, you're unmuted.
Yeah, that was essentially my question. I am finishing up my internship right now, and I've been in touch with my mentors on site, but so far it doesn't sound like there is much of an effort. I don't know if they're just sort of getting it started. So I was just curious, since I can't get a lot of information from them right now, what other people have been doing and how they've set it up.
I can speak to this piece a little bit. So my school recently rolled out a school-wide calendar where every teacher and support staff is inputting when they're planning on having a virtual conference, because some of our teachers were planning, to have a math meeting check-in at 11, and guidance was hosting a 6th grade group. And then that's where those conflicts for the kids happen and for the teachers. So it was kind of a great, a school-wide rollout when we did it. So when we are planning conferences, in terms of guidance, we'll input it on that spreadsheet. We're looking to meet with 6th grade at 1 o'clock and on Mondays, and 7th grade at 1 o'clock on Wednesdays. And then guidance already previously had a Google Classroom set up where all of our kids joined it. We were fortunate enough to do that in the beginning of the year. So that's kind of how we disseminate all of our information, and our guys know to go on there and check when we'll be having meetings, and then we'll do them through Zoom and send them the invites if they're interested in participating. So I hope that answers it, and feel free to tell me if it didn't, because but that's kind of been my experience so far.
And at my campus, we actually have a built-in guidance time with grades 9 through 12. So we've been with our older kids following their schedule throughout the day. Mm-hmm. Some teachers will give like assignments that aren't necessarily due at that time. And so I've had a lot of flexibility, and my students actually reaching out to me and letting me know when they would like to talk about things. Surprisingly, I would say with my older students, a lot of them are still like worried about college like readiness and college conversations. And the other, I'd say half are all split about like mental health things, but they've been reaching out to me and we've been setting it up, and it's been kind of flexible. I do have that kind of flexibility at my campus, and I am very aware that it's not like that everywhere, and it's a big privilege to have.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioning that you all had like, 2 or 3 days of sort of setting up programming and stuff. And so I guess that was kind of the question of, is it a like independent counseling department effort, or is it a school-wide effort and the counseling portion is part of that? Yeah, I guess.
I am the counseling team.
Yeah.
So kind of both, but like having the teacher and the staff buy-in, that was a really big part. And also administration has been extremely supportive and helpful in saying, like, at every staff meeting, I get to talk to the different teachers about things to look out for and things to like refer their students to me about. So that's been something as well, is just having them look out for things, because they're, especially with my younger kids, they're seeing the students a lot more often than I am.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah, I think that we're in, I mean, and this might be a little off the topic, but we're in a really unique position as support staff right now where we can kind of set the bar for what these conversations can look like and what our role is going to be virtually. And I think, like Regina said, administration has been really great for us too in doing that. Our kids' mental health right now and what they're feeling and their fears and anxieties is everything. And if they're not available to learn, then they're not going to be available in general. So I think if we're checking in with them first to make sure that they feel comfortable and invited, that's when the work starts, right? That's when, Jenna, you can start teaching and knowing that your kids are comfortable and available to learn. But I think all of us in the position we're in, whether it's teachers, admin, or counselors, we can set the tone for what these conversations can look like and how we choose to check in. And just like Regina was saying, it gets to be a lot when those kids get emails. So if you want to do like check-ins like that, push it on your guidance counselors. Like if they're open to ideas, put it on them. Like, I know that we've kind of taken that whole burden off of our teachers for right now, because right now they just need to focus on content. It's so tough for them to get that out there and feel comfortable putting a whole curriculum on a virtual learning platform. So if they're concerned about kids for right now, they're just reaching out to us until they feel comfortable, and then they're going to do their own check-in systems. Some teachers are already doing it, but utilize your counselors, because they can, create those check-in forms and blast them throughout, their district or school.
Okay, so another question I was asked, Michael DeAndrea, what topics are you covering in the videos that you're recording? And Michael, I'm going to unmute you just in case I didn't interpret your question correctly. I'm going to mute you 2 times.
Is that me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious, like, what topics are you covering? Also, could you describe, I think, Regina, you said middle school, if I heard you right? No?
I'm primarily working with high school, but I have students from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. Okay. But with my younger students, I'm basically working with their teachers closely and helping give supports, like, here are some read aloud options, here are some things to look out for, let me know if you see these behavior changes. And also teachers are encouraged to let administration know that if they haven't heard from students in a while, or if a student hasn't done work in a class for a couple days, like, it's pretty immediate. They get a phone call home and just checking in, like, not punitive in any way, but just saying, like, how are you doing? How's it going? As far as the content in the videos, it really depends on the age level. So with my grade 9s, we were already talking about empathy and how to be more empathetic. So now we're talking about how can we have empathy for what we're going through, and extending it to more than just like the people in my house, the teachers I'm working with, like, what are we doing there? I've also been talking a lot about stress management and wellness, and having the kids post pictures of like going on a walk. I'm starting to think about like our transition back to school, because we're really hoping to have that in the next couple weeks. So thinking about like thankfulness, I don't think we're there yet, but that's something that we're going to talk about when we do transition back. But having very, very short, accessible videos has been helpful. Like, I'll post a video that's only a few minutes long, and I'll say, write down 2 things that you're doing to help yourself through this, like with wellness, and then comment on 2 other people's posts. So that's
really great.
Encourage that. Mm-hmm.
Really good. Lindsay, how about you? What level are you at? By your presentation on how you put together, or your colleagues, that calendar, really smart starting point. Nice going.
Thanks. So I'm at the middle school level, and any group conversations that we're currently having, right now, or just kind of how are you? Our recent conversations with our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, we just rolled out our first group Zoom meetings, have just been, how are you feeling? What are you doing to stay occupied? What do you feel like you guys need right now? And we're kind of accumulating all of that feedback and then figuring out how myself and my co-counselor can kind of roll out future things for them. So right now we got a lot of organization, that the kids don't feel like they have a good system to stay, you know, on topic and on task. So we're trying to roll out different calendars and things that the kids can use and schedule. So just kind of hearing them out right now has been our group conversations. And the calendar, has been great.
I don't want to take up a lot of the time, but we're likely to disagree on what sort of topics can we broach that that it's okay for it to stimulate open and confidential information about parents and their parents, right? And I saw, I think I'm going to say it wrong. Is it Mahogany? Was you know, saying you know, something about what happens if the kids express concern about the parents. We might disagree on this. For me, that would be a risky area to go in a group that's larger, because how could you not talk about confidential things, you know,
Right.
casual habits of the parents and whatever. So to me, and we could disagree, that's all right. I would not include that in the group that you two are describing. But if it was brought up, I'd say, you know, that sounds like one of those issues that I would like to talk to you separate. Teaching boundaries, right? Teaching about what's I think what an opportunity we have with going on. I highlighted the word leadership because the three of you putting this together tonight and the content that we're getting, we have a chance to make a leap into greater legitimacy as a profession, don't you think?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
by doing all the things you're saying. I'm going to be quiet.
No, and I think you just brought up such a big point about the boundaries. I mean, first of all, we have such a big opportunity right now. And a lot of what I've been harping on is our kids are so engrossed in social media, and we have a really great opportunity, I know right now, to make these media outlets that they're using into a positive platform. And I think there's so much there that we'll be able to navigate as counselors. But back to your point, Michael, I think that what's so important is to set boundaries. So for our kids, they knew coming in that if they felt they needed to check in with us, that they needed to reach out to us individually, let us know what they were planning on talking about, and then we were able to set up what that conversation would look like. Once the kids know, if we'll tell them, you know, we're looking to join groups today just to kind of hear what your week's been. And that's kind of where it stays. If any conversation we feel when the kids are checking in with us in a group seems to be going teetering on that level of too personal, we'll reel them in right away and then reach out to them individually, because you know, it can get tricky, and they like to, right now, they're socially isolated. So when they get in those group conversations, they're ready to explode, right? Like some of us are right now. So I think those boundaries are key.
It might be able to be addressed by, of course, talking about, okay, well, we are feeling current concerns and these feelings of worry. And if they do overshare, again, like you suggested, I think it would be great to say, let's meet one-on-one. But giving the group the skills of how to navigate through their worries and concerns, I'd say that that's a perfectly good topic to talk about as a group. But again, yeah, they might bring up things that are very personal, and putting the brakes on for that is a good idea.
For sure.
Okay. Thank you all. And I do want to make sure that we address Mahogany. And reading her question, it looked more like she was asking, have you guys had experiences of discussing with students their concerns and worries about their parents being essential employees or who've lost their jobs, and how have you guys kind of attended to that? And I've unmuted Mahogany so she can speak towards her question.
Hi, that is correct. So I am at a practicum at a school that is somewhat privileged and then somewhat not. But my full-time job, I work with only low-income first-generation high school students. So right now, we've been focused on giving them resources to make sure that they are physically okay and physically sheltered. But the conversation has definitely come up a lot about their parents still having to work. So it's either you work or you have no job, and just making sure I support them correctly and give them those kind of coping skills to deal with things that some might not be dealing with. Some might be dealing with their parents being home, the whole time. So just wanting to know that.
I can't, I empathize. I mean, I can't imagine, that for a district. I'm fortunate enough to be in one where our kids were able to leave all with Chromebook books and know that they have full internet access. And the fact that you're kind of not only navigating a new virtual platform, but also trying to make sure that all of your guys are safe on their end is a lot. And you're probably having to find a whole bunch of new resources that you never really, and opportunities that are accessible to them through this like medical time where no one can really go outside of their own four walls. So that's a lot. I have dealt with a student whose parent was faced with either they came to work or they were losing their job. And I have both of the siblings, so I spoke to each of them individually. And those conversations are tough. I wish I had like a tips and tricks on how to, navigate that, but really just helping them understand and being there and saying, this is a really tough situation, but you're not alone and other people are going through this too. And you have a hardworking parent that will be on top of it, is helpful for them. Normally in that situation, I do contact the parent because I do think that when kids are feeling that struggle, it's really important that the parent knows where they're at too, and they can kind of facilitate that conversation. I know when I spoke to that parent, she kind of clued me in on what the real situation was with her job. And the student was kind of a little bit more anxious than the actual situation. I know that could be different, but for anybody, but it was good to, clue in the parent as well. Regina, I don't know if you have anything on that topic.
I don't want to say too much because that hasn't been something that I've encountered. I really like the suggestions that you gave. And I do agree, like, that's a very difficult place to be at. And like, it sounds like your students have a lot of things on their plate right now, Mahogany. And so just being there for them and again, letting them know that they're not alone and maybe giving them some tools on how to get through those concerns and through those big feelings.
Thank you both. So you guys kind of talked about how do you connect with families as well as just your student, or if you do. And I think that this is definitely a conversation we want to push forward a little bit more. So could you guys expand on how and if and when you get in touch with families? How are you incorporating them into your services? How are your schools posting information for families? What's the counselor's role in all of that? And I'm going to unmute Anna to make sure I've translated her question correctly and to see if she has any more that she wants to add on to that question.
Hi, yeah, this is actually a really nice transition from what you were both talking about. So that really sums it up. I'm just wondering what your contact has been with families right now, and just, are you working with your admin to be able to provide like consistent messaging about everything that's happening in your communities? Or is that something that maybe the admin takes care of? And just, yeah, what has been your experience with either families reaching out to you or you reaching out to families? So thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Yeah. All right, who's going first?
Well, I can kind of say, because I think I'm in a very unique situation. Being in Kobe, there's not a lot of English speakers, so we're a little bit more enmeshed than what you'd anticipate back home. We're very, very close with the families. A lot of people live in the same buildings, so it has been quite easy to stay in touch with families, and a lot of our community is kind of intertwined. And so just having those check-ins has been helpful. Yes, we've been very much working with admin on like everyone saying the same messaging, staff, myself, administration, we're all giving the same messages. And we do have formal and informal check-ins with each other about that. We're currently just social distancing. We're not in isolation. So I can still go to my campus if I would like to. I've been really not going as much, but people are still there. And so we're like checking in with each other, and some people are closer with certain families, and so we're able to get the messaging out that way.
Yeah, Anna, I think that's such an important question. So I work with an administrator, both of them who are incredible, but my principal definitely loves to be the first line of communication to parents. So I've always had great one-to-one communication with my parents about specific students, but I definitely advocated hard that when we went into virtual schooling, that I thought it was important that from the counseling front, a document was sent out from us with like vital resources, hotlines, articles, how to deal with your students' stress and anxiety, ways to give them, you know, outlets at home, just kind of a one pager that gives them resources where they can go and how to kind of cope and manage with that stuff. Because I think it's important, one, that it's digestible for parents. If you throw a million things at them, they're going to be like, I don't know what to do. And now I'm worried that this is all going to happen. So we kind of just posed it that this was a just in case, and that we're always here, obviously, at the front line, but they're the people that are at home with their little people. So it was good to kind of send that document out, and it opened the lines of communications for parents. I haven't heard too much from them. Sometimes they'll ask us if we can reach out just to show them like a friendly face that they haven't seen in a while. But besides that, they were thankful for the resources, and I know some of our parents are using them.
Yeah, we've put a similar piece, a one page, into our distance learning plan. So that's also something that from the very beginning was there, and it's broken down by age group, as well as resources that are like specifically for parents on how to cope with being a full-time caregiver in a situation where you're also still working. So that's something, thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Anna. Do we have any more questions? Okay, so we're about 8 minutes to the hour. So kind of just wanted to allow some time for processing, open the floor. Oh, we use S'more. So Richard Kloss just put in the chat, they utilize S'more. It's an online newsletter that they put together. S'more.com. And I'll also add to that, Microsoft Office has a platform for newsletters. So if your campus is using Microsoft Office, you have access to that. It's called Sway, I do believe. And
That's
so you can put together newsletters that way for your students and for your campus. So I just wanted to make sure we had some time to kind of address and to see if there were any last minute comments or last minute questions people wanted us to address. I don't see a few faces. So I'm going to take the content of Michael. I'm going to unmute now.
Thank you. First of all, thanks again to the people organizing this. What a great job. Very stimulating, very helpful, especially on a practical level. And at the risk of being repetitive, I think that we have a wonderful opportunity right now to provide leadership where we have not always done that in the past. I love your ideas about wellness, and I would tie in positive psychology there and real practical things that are doing. So again, I would just invite people to reflect on the different ways you're interpreting that these folks here and what we're doing represents important components of leadership. And at some point along the line, are we going to have another one of these, or?
Well, yeah, ARCA would be glad to host more conversations. And I think that's one of the things we want to do, is to make this a conversation.
If you could let us know.
A lot of,
if you could let us know, and I just got to figure out how to get the copy because I want to start getting it around to school counselors here.
oh yeah, we'll be editing this video just to make it a little more polished, and we'll send this out for you guys to utilize, to look back at and review. Lindsay?
Yeah, there's just one thing I wanted to say off of Michael's point, is that we are all in a really unique place as leaders, and as much as we all have to add to the conversation, so do you guys. So I wanted to take, I mean, I know we really only have 6 more minutes to open the floor to you guys too, because we're all in the same boat. We're kind of learning virtually together. So if there are things that you're doing or people in your school are doing that are awesome, I think it'd be great to kind of hear that, because we could probably all learn a little from each other. And the more we do that, I think the better, you know, the more we have for our kids. So
I definitely agree. There's a huge motivation to this conversation. I'm talking to Regina about her experiences. One thing she mentioned was looking at the clothes that your kids are wearing when they come into your online meetings and noticing, are they wearing the same clothes? Right? Because that might be a sign we need to have a deeper conversation. When she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I would not have thought of that. Regina, can you speak a little more about how do you address those kind of clothing concerns at a stay-at-home situation?
So we've been, I've been having those group conversations, and it kind of came up with, like, the students sort of brought it up. They didn't mention clothing specifically, but when I said, okay, name 2 things that you're doing to take care of yourself and then comment on other people's posts, they were bringing up, okay, I'm making sure to get showered every day. I'm doing these kinds of things. And so it kind of happened organically, and just that might not happen. I can't speak for it not happening that way, because my students they're very open with each other, and they're mentioning things that, like, they're all taking care of each other as much as they can as well. So that's how I've been able to navigate it. But if you do have that kind of rapport with your students, just checking in and saying, how's everything going? Have you had any food today? Have you had any water today? That's something that I have had to pointedly ask students, because in some ways they're forgetting how important that is. And we've had the conversation of, you know, you're not able to perform your best or be your best self if you are hungry, thirsty, tired. So addressing those needs first. And then it kind of branched into a bigger conversation of addressing these things can also help your wellness and your mental wellness. So you're helping your body be at its top form in those situations. And so while I haven't necessarily needed to address the clothing aspect, we've talked about different things, like just making sure, like, you're going to school every day, you're well prepared and well rested.
And I will say, having had that conversation with Regina, I was like, oh, I'm not drinking enough water. And I was like, and so now I'm more mindful of making sure I'm drinking water. It's something about staying in the house a little bit more. It's just like,
Yes.
I'm just going to have coffee, or I just don't even think about doing those basic little things. And for our students, it's like, drink a water.
Yes.
Have
and
something.
My student and I actually went ahead and I was like, we're going to drink a glass of water together. And so we were having our conversation and drinking our water. And that way it wasn't like, do this. It was like, we're going to do this together because this is good for us.
Hey, so I just want to say thank you all for joining this conversation. I think this is a conversation that we'll definitely have to host again, and I hope to see you all again as you guys are entering into experiences your own selves and getting more invested in more tangibly a part of this process. I want to thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Regina. Thank you, Lindsay, for being a part of our facilitation tonight. And I hope you all have a great night.
Thank you guys
so much.
Okay, yeah. So thank you all very much. You guys have a great night. Goodbye.